When a flight attendant mocked an elderly black woman for taking a first-class seat she rightfully owned, she didn't know that woman's granddaughter was watching, and that her next move would shake the entire airline. The intercom crackled above the crowded terminal. Flight 228 to Los Angeles is now boarding. First class and platinum members may board at this time. At the far end of the boarding lane stood Evelyn Parker, a 72-year-old black woman, elegant in every step. Her silver-gray hair was tied neatly into a bun, her dark chocolate skin glowing softly beneath the airport lights. Dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit with a silk scarf around her neck, she looked more like royalty than a retiree. In her right hand, she clutched a first-class boarding pass. In the other, a small leather handbag embossed with gold initials, EP. Behind her, a line of travelers fidgeted impatiently, glancing at their phones. Evelyn took a steady breath, her calm presence standing out amid the chaos. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right line?" The question came sharp, cutting through the noise. Evelyn turned. Standing by the boarding podium was flight attendant Lisa Reed, a white woman in her early 30s, blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, red lipstick precise, posture stiff. Her name tag shone proudly, Lisa, Senior Cabin Crew. Lisa's polite smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, dear," Evelyn replied softly. "I'm in 1A. She raised her boarding pass gently. Lisa's brow furrowed. "First class?" she repeated, voice dipped with disbelief. "Yes," Evelyn said, maintaining her grace. Lisa's tone shifted, just slightly. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but first class has priority boarding for premium passengers and executives." The implication hung heavy. Evelyn felt the weight of years of such small, cutting reminders, the kind that sound polite but sting deep. Lisa took the ticket from Evelyn's hand and scanned it. The green light beeped, perfectly valid. Still, she hesitated. "Oh, well, you must have used miles then." "No," Evelyn replied. "I purchased the ticket, full fare." Lisa blinked, lips tightening. "Right. Please step aside for a moment, ma'am, while I check something." A young white couple behind Evelyn exchanged amused glances. The man whispered under his breath, "Guess she got lucky with an upgrade." Evelyn heard it. She always heard it. But she chose silence over confrontation, at least for now. From her purse, she retrieved her phone and opened a message thread labeled My Star Ava. "Evelyn, text, boarding soon, sweetheart. Tell your mom I'll be there by dinner." Ava text, "Safe flight, Grandma. Love you." She smiled faintly at the words. 2 rows behind, Jason Cole, a black man, 28, tall, athletic, wearing a company badge marked Aerotech Engineering, watched the exchange. His jaw tightened. He'd seen that tone too many times before. The one used to remind people like him they didn't belong in certain places. Jason stepped forward slightly. "Everything okay here?" "Yes, sir. Just verifying this passenger's details." "She's holding a valid boarding pass," Jason said calmly. "You already scanned it." Lisa's smile hardened. "Sir, please return to your boarding group." The crowd grew awkwardly quiet. Evelyn glanced at Jason, a silent plea for him not to escalate it. She'd fought too many of these battles in her life. Not here, not now. Finally, Lisa waved her hand. "Fine. Go ahead, ma'am." Evelyn thanked her softly and walked through the jet bridge. Her back straight, her dignity intact, even as she heard Lisa mutter something behind her breath. Inside the plane, Evelyn settled into seat 1A. The white leather seat gleamed. A glass of sparkling water waited on the tray table. She looked out the window at the morning lights spilling across the tarmac. Flying used to excite her. Now, it only reminded her of how people saw her, not as who she was, but what they assumed. Her husband had passed 5 years ago. She had built Parker Industries, a global logistics company, from the ground up. She'd been a CEO, a mentor, and one of the few black women to lead a Fortune 500 company. But no one here knew that, and Lisa surely hadn't cared. As passengers continued boarding, Lisa entered the cabin, greeting each guest. Her smile returned, brighter now, for everyone else. When she reached Evelyn, she paused. "Would you like me to explain how the seat functions, ma'am?" "I believe I can manage," Evelyn said gently. "I've flown this route many times." Lisa's eyebrows twitched. "Of course." A few nearby passengers smirked again. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, practiced. As the plane taxied down the runway, Evelyn's mind drifted back to her granddaughter, Ava Parker, 23, light brown skin, sharp-eyed, confident, who had just graduated from Harvard Law. Ava always said, "Grandma, you shouldn't let people treat you like you don't be. You earned your seat." Evelyn had laughed then. "Child, sometimes it's not about proving yourself. It's about teaching them grace." But now, as the engines roared and the flight lifted into the sky, she wondered if she'd been too forgiving for too long. A couple of hours later, Evelyn rang the call button. Lisa appeared promptly, smile thinner now. "Yes, ma'am? Could I have a cup of tea, please, with lemon?" Lisa nodded curtly, returning minutes later with the cup, but placed it roughly on Evelyn's tray, spilling a bit of hot tea onto her napkin. "Oh, careful!" Evelyn said softly. "My apologies," Lisa muttered, clearly not meaning it. "It's hard to balance when the cabin's full." Evelyn dabbed the spill with a napkin. Jason, seated a few rows back in 3B, witnessed it again. He exchanged a look with a white businessman beside him, who shrugged and whispered, "Maybe she's just clumsy." Jason didn't reply. He knew clumsy from condescending. Lisa moved on to chat cheerfully with other passengers. All white, all laughing. Evelyn took a deep breath and opened her journal. She wrote neatly, her handwriting elegant and composed. Another small reminder today. First class in name, but not in treatment. I wonder what Ava would say if she saw this. At that very moment, her phone buzzed. Ava's message popped up on the in-flight Wi-Fi chat. "Grandma, how's the flight? Send me a pic of your seat." Evelyn smiled sadly, took a discreet picture, and unintentionally captured Lisa in the background, glaring directly at her. She didn't know it yet, but that single photo would later go viral. As the plane descended into LA, Lisa made one last announcement. "First-class passengers, please, remain seated until our staff assists you." When the door opened, Lisa hurried to help a young white couple retrieve their bags. But when Evelyn stood up and reached for her overhead luggage, Lisa blocked her path slightly. "Ma'am, please wait. We'll bring your bag down." "Thank you, but I can manage," Evelyn said, standing on tiptoe. "No, really, ma'am. We wouldn't want you to strain yourself." Her tone dripped with false politeness. A few passengers snickered. Evelyn felt her chest tighten, not from age, but from insult. Jason rose quickly. "I'll get that for you, ma'am," he said. He retrieved the bag effortlessly and handed it to her. "Thank you, young man," she said quietly, grateful but humiliated. As Evelyn walked off the plane, Lisa's voice followed behind. "Have a wonderful day, ma'am." The words were sugary, but Evelyn could taste the poison beneath. Outside the gate, Ava stood waiting, radiant in a tailored suit, phone in hand. "Grandma," she said, rushing forward to hug her. "Oh, my heart," Evelyn whispered. "It's so good to see you, baby." Ava pulled back slightly. noticing the tension in her grandmother's face. "What happened?" Evelyn hesitated. ... "Nothing that hasn't happened before." Ava's jaw tightened. "Who was it?" Evelyn handed her the phone, the photo still open. Lisa in the background, glaring. Ava's eyes darkened. "Grandma, that's not nothing. It's over, sweetheart. Let's just go." But Ava wasn't done. She never let injustice slide, not when it touched her family. As they walked toward baggage claim, Ava opened her laptop bag and whispered to herself, "Let's see what this airline really stands for." The quiet determination in her tone would soon turn a simple flight incident into a nationwide storm. The cafe buzzed with the noise of clinking cups and rushing travelers. But Ava Parker sat stone still, her eyes glued to her grandmother's face. Evelyn Parker, still dignified despite the insult, stirred her tea slowly, her hand trembling slightly. "You're shaking," Ava whispered. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. That's all." "No, Grandma," Ava said, voice low but firm. "You're hurt. And I'm angry." Evelyn looked up, her deep brown eyes filled with quiet pain, the kind that came from years of swallowing small humiliations. "It's not the first time," she said softly. "But it needs to be the last," Ava replied. She reached for her grandmother's phone, scrolling to the photo Evelyn had taken mid-flight. The image was clear. Lisa Reed, the flight attendant, standing behind Evelyn with a glare so cold it needed no caption. "This," Ava said, holding up the screen, "isn't confusion. It's contempt," Evelyn sighed. "People like her were raised to believe certain faces don't belong in certain places. But I've lived long enough to know grace wins more battles than anger." Ava smiled bitterly. "Maybe. But sometimes grace has to come with consequences." Ava opened her laptop, logged into her social media, and typed, "This is my grandmother, Evelyn Parker, 72 years old, retired CEO of Parker Industries. Today, a flight attendant humiliated her for sitting in first class. Why? Because she didn't look like she belonged there. Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet sneer, a slow scan of your ticket, a comment like, 'Are you sure this is your seat?' My grandmother paid for her seat. What she didn't pay for was humiliation." She attached the photo and clicked post. Within 5 minutes, the post exploded. Comments poured in. "This broke my heart. Why are we still doing this in 2025? Say her name. Expose the airline. My black mother went through the same thing last month." Ava didn't smile. She didn't feel satisfaction, only a rising fire in her chest. She typed again. "Her name is Evelyn Parker, and the airline is Aerosky." That was the match. The story hit 1 million views in an hour, in homes, offices, and airports across America. The photo of Evelyn went viral. News channels replayed Ava's video on loop. Morning talk shows discussed implicit bias in customer service. But online, the real battle raged in the comments. Some voices screamed for justice. Others tried to defend Lisa. Maybe it wasn't racism. People are too sensitive now. She was just doing her job. Why make it about color? Under one such comment, Ava replied sharply, "Because color is what made her question a 72-year-old woman's right to be in a seat she paid for. If that same woman were white, she'd have been offered champagne, not suspicion." Her reply hit 100,000 likes in under an hour. In the glass offices of Aerosky Airlines, panic was spreading. Mark Richards, the PR director, threw his phone on the table. "We're trending for all the wrong reasons." Karen Jones, the VP of Customer Relations, frowned. "Just another social media storm. It'll pass." You don't get it, Mark shot back. The woman's a former Fortune 500 CEO. Her granddaughter's a Harvard law graduate. This isn't a rant. It's... Karen's phone buzzed again. She turned it over. A message from the CEO himself. Handle this before it becomes a lawsuit. She swallowed hard. Who was the flight attendant? Lisa Reed. 12 years with the company. Never had a complaint until now. Mark sighed. Well, she has one now, and half the country's seen it. Hours later, AeroSky released a statement. We regret that Miss Parker felt uncomfortable during her travel experience. Our team is reviewing the incident and will take necessary action. Ava read it on her phone. Her blood boiled. Felt uncomfortable? Are you kidding me? She slammed her phone on the table. They're not even apologizing. They're gaslighting you, Grandma. Evelyn glanced up from her tea. That's what companies do, sweetheart. They protect themselves. Then I'll make sure they can't. Ava opened her laptop again. We regret that Miss Parker felt uncomfortable, she typed. She didn't feel uncomfortable. She was humiliated. B. On your plane, under your brand. That tweet went viral in under 10 minutes. By morning, even celebrities were resharing it. At a private airline meeting that evening, Lisa sat on one side of a long table, nervously twisting her hands. Karen Jones sat opposite her, along with Tom Walters, the head of HR. Lisa, Karen began, tell us exactly what happened. I didn't mean anything by it, Lisa said quickly. She just didn't look like the usual first-class passengers. I thought maybe she'd made a mistake. What do you mean, didn't look like? Karen asked quietly. You know, not the typical business traveler. Tom raised a brow. You mean she was black? Lisa froze. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Karen said flatly. Lisa's face turned red. I didn't mean it like that. I treat everyone the same. No, Tom interrupted. You treat people the way you've been taught to see them. That's the problem. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. So now I'm a racist. You tell us, Karen said. Because from where the world's sitting, that's exactly what it looks like. By nightfall, AeroSky's social media was flooded with comments. Some supported Evelyn. Others viciously defended Lisa. Ava read one particularly hateful comment aloud. Black privilege is when you can ruin someone's career over a misunderstanding. She clenched her fists. Privilege? Grandma, they think you're privileged because you stood up for yourself. Evelyn touched her arm gently. That's how they silence us, Ava. Make you feel guilty for speaking truth. But Ava's eyes were burning. Not this time. They'll hear every word. The next morning, Ava received an email from AeroSky's legal office requesting a private conversation to resolve the matter. She called them directly. You want to fix this privately? Yes, Miss Parker. We value your family's privacy and would like to... AUP. You didn't value her dignity when your employee humiliated her in front of a cabin full of people. So no, we're not doing this in the dark. You'll apologize publicly, or not at all. There was silence on the other end of the call. We'll get back to you, the voice said tightly. Ava hung up. They'll call back, she said to Evelyn. How can you be sure? Because they care about headlines more than humanity. As public pressure grew, hundreds of black travelers began sharing their own experiences. Stories poured in. A black veteran asked to prove his first-class ticket. A black doctor mistaken for a janitor while boarding. A black mother accused of using someone else's miles. Ava reposted every story. She captioned them with one line. This isn't about one flight attendant. Despite her calm, Evelyn was exhausted. Every phone call, every message, every headline, it all dragged her back through memories she'd buried for decades. They used to call me the token executive when I started Parker Industries, she said quietly. They'd invite me to meetings, then forget to introduce me. She looked out the window. I thought we'd moved past this, Ava. I really did. Ava squeezed her hand. We're moving past it by facing it. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then let's finish what we started. When Ava announced a press conference, journalists flooded the lobby of a downtown hotel. Cameras flashed as Evelyn entered, radiant, regal, and calm. Ava followed, expression set like stone. My grandmother doesn't need anyone's pity, Ava said into the microphones. She needs what every human being deserves, respect. A reporter shouted, "Do you believe the flight attendant was racist?" Ava's eyes sharpened. I believe she acted out of something worse than hatred. Assumption. An assumption kills opportunity. It kills dignity. It kills equality. She turned slightly toward Evelyn. My grandmother shouldn't have to prove she belongs in first class. This country should have made that clear decades ago. Evelyn stepped forward then, her voice calm but firm. I'm not angry at that young woman, she said softly, but I am disappointed that after 72 years, I still have to teach the same lesson, that the color of your skin doesn't determine the worth of your seat. The room fell silent. The only sound was the clicking of cameras, capturing a moment that would soon circle the globe. Inside Aerosky's boardroom, chaos. Karen slammed her laptop shut. She just destroyed our brand image in 5 minutes. Mark paced the room. We have to apologize publicly, and fast. To save our reputation, or to do what's right, Karen shot back. Mark hesitated. At this point, they're the same thing. Alone in her apartment, Lisa scrolled through the videos, tears streaming. She stopped at one, Evelyn's gentle voice echoing through her phone. I pity her, because she's never had to fight for her place. Lisa pressed pause, staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. For the first time, she didn't feel angry. She felt ashamed. That night, Evelyn looked at her granddaughter and said softly, You've made them listen, Ava. Now let's make them learn. Ava looked up. What do you mean? I want to meet that flight attendant. Ava blinked. After everything she did? Especially after everything she did, Evelyn said. Forgiveness is power, but so is teaching. Morning in the airport lounge. The morning after the humiliating flight, Evelyn Carter, 68, black, elegant, silver hair, deep brown skin glowing faintly under soft morning light, sat in the Heathrow Business Lounge, her hands folded neatly on her lap. Every move she made carried grace, but beneath that calm exterior was a woman wrestling with the sting of something old and ugly, racism, dressed as procedure. Beside her, Naomi Carter, 27, black, confident, warm-toned skin, stylish in a cream blazer, scrolled through her phone, her expression flickering between anger and disbelief. The video she posted last night had 10 million views. Hashtags, like hashtag Justice for Evelyn, hashtag Flying While Black, and hashtag Not an Inconvenience were trending globally. A group of young black passengers passed by, nodding at Evelyn, in quiet solidarity. One stopped and whispered, We saw the video. You're not alone. Evelyn offered a small, gracious smile. Her heart still ached. She had lived through segregation, the bitter echoes of Jim Crow. Yet here she was in 20 moments later, Clara Whitman, 32, white, blonde hair tied tight, pale eyes, flight attendant who humiliated Evelyn, entered, her confident stance replaced with nervous stiffness. Behind her were Henry Wilkes, 45, white, SkyJet PR director, and Margaret O'Connell, 50, white, VP of Customer Experience, both corporate damage control veterans. Their smiles were tight. Their eyes avoided Evelyn. Mrs. Carter, Miss Carter, Henry began, voice smooth but mechanical. We appreciate you agreeing to meet. On behalf of SkyJet Airlines, I want to offer our deepest apologies for the unfortunate misunderstanding. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Misunderstanding? Henry hesitated. Yes, the incident on Flight 203. Evelyn's calm voice cut like a blade. You mean the part where your employee assumed I didn't belong in first class because I'm black? Naomi's voice trembled, sharp with anger. You didn't even ask for her boarding pass before calling security. You saw her color, not her credentials. Clara's eyes darted around desperately. It wasn't like that, I swear. I just followed procedure. Evelyn's gaze remained unwavering. Procedure doesn't make you point at me and say, "This isn't your seat." Procedure doesn't make you call for help like I was trespassing. That's not procedure. That's prejudice. Margaret stepped in quickly, forcing a corporate smile. Mrs. Carter, we understand how this looked. Evelyn corrected her sharply. No, you don't. You can't. Because when it happens to someone who looks like me, people call it a mistake. When it happens to someone who looks like you, it's called a violation of dignity. Corporate coldness versus human truth. Naomi leaned forward, recording the meeting quietly. You say you're sorry, but you haven't acknowledged what actually happened. You haven't said the word, Henry Fox. What word? Racism, Naomi said flatly. Say it. They froze. Clara's lips trembled. Henry looked down at his tablet. Margaret crossed her arms. We're not here to assign intent, Henry said weakly. You're not here to admit guilt, Naomi shot back. You're here to make the story go away. Evelyn's tone softened, carrying years of wisdom and pain. I've been fighting to be seen my whole life. I thought maybe if I built enough, gave enough, led enough, I could earn respect. But yesterday, I learned again that some people still see my skin before they see my soul. Clara whispered, barely audible. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. Evelyn turned to her gently. You don't owe me an apology, child. You owe yourself an education. The silence that followed was thick enough to suffocate. A hollow apology. A few hours later, Naomi and Evelyn reviewed an email from the airline's lawyers. SkyJet Airlines deeply regrets the inconvenience experienced by Mrs. We value all our customers equally and are committed to ongoing inclusivity training. Naomi's voice shook. Inconvenience? They call what happened to you an inconvenience? Evelyn closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. That's how they survive. Hide behind legal words, never face the truth. Naomi clenched her fists. No, not this time. She typed furiously. My grandmother wasn't inconvenienced. She was humiliated, profiled, and degraded because she dared to be black in first class. SkyJet doesn't need diversity training. They need accountability. Within hours, the post went viral. News outlets picked it up. Civil rights groups and celebrities amplified the story. SkyJet's stock plummeted 8% overnight. Inside the airline boardroom, at SkyJet HQ, chaos reigned. Thomas Reed, 58, white, CEO, cold and calculating, slammed his hand on the boardroom table. Who let that letter go out? We look like fools. Margaret muttered, nervous. Sir, the letter was standard protocol. Protocol? Reed snapped. Protocol just cost us $10 million in public trust. Henry tried to calm him. We can fix this. Issue a stronger statement. Maybe offer her compensation. Reed's voice turned to a growl. No, we're not writing checks to every angry person online. We'll control the narrative. Make it seem like a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Margaret hesitated. Sir, with all due respect, this is more than a misunderstanding. People are calling it systemic racism, Reed sneered. Systemic racism? Don't be dramatic. One employee messed up. The woman just got emotional. Henry muttered, that emotional woman built the company that sponsored our leadership conference last year. Reed's face darkened. Then maybe we remind her of that. Send her a partnership proposal. Something shiny to shut her up. Evelyn's strength. That evening, Naomi found Evelyn in her study, the light golden and soft. She stared at a photo of her first office. 6 people in a one-room space, all smiling. "I worked so hard to prove we could belong," Evelyn said quietly. And yet one flight attendant's glare brought it all crashing back. Naomi sat beside her. "Then let's make sure the next black woman on that flight never has to feel that way again." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You've got my fire, girl." Naomi squeezed her hand. "No, Grandma, you lit it first." The interview that changed everything. The next morning, Evelyn and Naomi appeared on Good Morning America. Host Rachel Green, 40s, white, empathetic, welcomed them. "Mrs. Carter, the world has watched your story. What do you want people to take away?" Evelyn looked directly into the camera. "I want them to know that success doesn't shield you from racism. You can build empires, earn degrees, lead nations, but until people stop judging worth by skin, we are still fighting the same battle in new uniforms." Rachel's eyes glistened. "And what do you want from SkyJet?" Naomi answered firmly. "We don't want money. We want change, real change, in hiring, training, accountability. An airline where dignity isn't dependent on color." The segment went viral. Protesters appeared outside SkyJet offices. It's not about a seat, it's about respect. Flying while black shouldn't be a risk. SkyJet executives panicked. Reporters demanded answers. The world was watching. As Evelyn left the studio, her posture straight, her face calm, it was clear. The woman they tried to humiliate had become a symbol of something much larger. The viral momentum forced SkyJet's competitors and government officials to take notice. News crews followed Evelyn and Naomi to every public appearance, amplifying their message. Evelyn's calm authority contrasted sharply with corporate chaos. Social media users created memes, hashtags, and threads exposing historical discrimination in airlines. Corporate boards, once indifferent, began to fear the reputational fallout of ignoring racism. SkyJet's stock continued to drop. Leaks hinted at internal memos instructing staff to avoid future issues, which only fueled public outrage. Evelyn, however, remained unshaken. "Change isn't about fear," she told Naomi that evening. "It's about forcing people to face truth, whether they like it or not." Naomi, typing updates for millions to see, whispered, "Grandma, we're rewriting history." Evelyn smiled faintly. "No, baby, we're finally telling it as it is." The morning sun broke over New York City, painting the skyline gold, but inside SkyJet Airlines headquarters, the mood was anything but bright. In the 27th-floor boardroom, panic buzzed louder than the city traffic below. Thomas Reed, 58, white CEO, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of man who smiled for cameras but sneered behind closed doors, slammed the latest financial report onto the table. "Our stocks dropped another 4% overnight. The Carter story isn't dying, it's spreading." His assistant muttered timidly, "Sir, there are protests in 3 airports now, LAX, Atlanta, and Chicago." Thomas rubbed his temples. "Perfect. That's half our market." Across from him sat Margaret O'Connell, 50, white, vice president, anxious but loyal, who fidgeted with her pen. "The diversity office is asking if we should issue a new apology, one that actually uses the word racism this time." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Absolutely not. The minute we admit that word, we're finished. This isn't about race. It's about perception. People see what they want to see." Henry Wilkes, 45. "With respect, sir, people saw the video. There's no spinning that. The attendant's words, the tone, it's unmistakable. And now Naomi Carter's posts are pulling millions of views. They're calling this the SkyJet scandal. Thomas's cold smile returned. Then maybe it's time we remind the world who really controls the skies. Later that afternoon, Evelyn and Naomi sat in Evelyn's office, a warm book-filled space with glass walls overlooking downtown Atlanta. The phone rang. Evelyn picked it up. It was Margaret O'Connell, her voice polished, rehearsed, corporate. Mrs. Carter, SkyJet deeply values your legacy. We'd like to propose a partnership, a new initiative called Soar Together. You'd be the face of our diversity campaign. We'll donate $2 million to minority-owned businesses in your name. Evelyn listened in silence. Naomi, sitting across from her, mouthed silently, "Don't." When Margaret finished her speech, Evelyn replied calmly, "You want to use my face to clean your image, but you can't buy integrity, Miss O'Connell, especially not from me." Margaret's tone faltered. "Mrs. Carter, this could be a positive collaboration." Evelyn interrupted gently. "No. What happened wasn't a PR issue, it was a moral one. And until your company understands that, no campaign can fix what's broken." She hung up. Naomi looked proud. "You handled that perfectly." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Oh, we're just getting started." A week later, a congressional subcommittee on corporate discrimination invited Evelyn to testify. The viral incident had become national news. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack had sparked hundreds of passengers to share their own experiences of being profiled, disrespected, or humiliated in the skies. The hearing was televised live. Evelyn arrived wearing a deep navy suit, pearls at her neck, her posture regal. Naomi walked beside her, phone in hand, recording everything. The committee chair, Senator Avery Morales, 40s, Latina, fierce and fair, welcomed her warmly. "Mrs. Carter, thank you for being here. The nation has watched your story. We'd like to hear your perspective." Evelyn spoke clearly into the microphone, her voice calm but weighted with emotion. "I've been flying for decades. I've built companies that partner with airlines. But on that flight, none of that mattered. Because in the eyes of one attendant and the system that trained her, my skin color erased my accomplishments." She paused, her gaze steady. "I wasn't mistaken for a criminal. I wasn't mistaken for a stowaway. I was mistaken for less." Gasps filled the room. She continued, voice firm. "Racism today doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, through assumptions, tone, and doubt. That's what happened to me." Senator Morales leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, what would you like to see change?" Evelyn looked directly at the camera. "I want every company that profits from diversity to practice it. I want airlines to treat passengers like people, not profiles. I want my granddaughter, and yours, to fly without fear of being judged by what they see in the mirror." The audience broke into quiet applause. Even the news anchors covering the hearing choked up. Back at SkyJet HQ, Thomas Reed fumed as he watched the broadcast. "She's making us look like villains." Henry replied, "Sir, she's not making us look like villains. We are. The more you resist, the worse this gets." Thomas's eyes darkened. "Then maybe it's time we remind the Carters that their little empire isn't untouchable." The next morning, anonymous leaks began appearing online. Old financial records, twisted facts about Evelyn's company, out-of-context emails implying she'd received preferential treatment in contracts. Naomi saw them first. "They're trying to discredit us, Grandma. They're desperate." Evelyn smiled sadly. "When powerful men fear truth, They always reach for lies, but Naomi wasn't backing down. She called a press conference. At the downtown Hilton, reporters filled the ballroom. Cameras flashed as Naomi stood at the podium beside her grandmother. Naomi's voice was fierce, her anger now channeled into clarity. SkyJet thinks they can smear us, silence us, or buy us off. But they underestimated who they humiliated. My grandmother built her success on integrity, something they've clearly lost. She turned toward the cameras. If they want to leak documents, let's leak the truth. Here are emails showing how SkyJet ignored discrimination complaints from their own employees for years. She displayed printed evidence, whistleblower reports, internal memos, diversity complaints buried by corporate lawyers. The room exploded in murmurs. Reporters swarmed with questions. Evelyn stepped forward, resting a gentle hand on Naomi's shoulder. You can't fight hate with hate, child, but you can shine light where darkness hides. Naomi nodded, tears in her eyes. Within 48 hours, major networks ran the exposé. SkyJet Airlines accused of systemic racism and cover-up. The company's investors demanded an emergency board meeting. Thomas Reed was forced to resign. Margaret O'Connell and Henry Wilkes were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. In a stunning turn, Clara Whitman, the flight attendant who started it all, came forward publicly. On national TV, she admitted, "What I did was wrong. I was trained to see passengers a certain way, to question, to assume. I never realized how deeply that bias ran in all of us. I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. "Mrs. Carter, if you're watching, I learned more from your grace than any training Evel taught me." Weeks later, Evelyn and Naomi received an invitation. SkyJet Airlines' new CEO, Daniel Kim, 42, Korean-American, progressive, reform-minded, wanted to meet, pay. They met in a small conference room. No cameras this time. Daniel bowed slightly. "Mrs. Carter, I can't undo what was done, but I can start fixing what's broken. I want you to lead a new board, one focused on racial equity in corporate travel." Evelyn smiled softly. "Not for me, for those who will come after me," Naomi added. "And no PR slogans, real policy, real training, real accountability." Daniel nodded. "Agreed." Months later, Evelyn boarded another SkyJet flight, this time as the keynote speaker for the company's new Equality in the Skies program. As she entered first class, passengers recognized her and applauded quietly. Even the new attendants, of every background and color, greeted her with warmth and respect. Evelyn smiled as she took her seat by the window. Naomi sat beside her, holding her hand. Naomi whispered, "Grandma, you changed everything." Evelyn looked out at the clouds and said softly, "No, baby. We just reminded them the sky belongs to every." The evening in Atlanta was calm, yet heavy with expectation. Evelyn Carter, 68, black, poised, silver hair, eyes reflecting decades of wisdom and resilience, sat at her mahogany desk, a blank page before her, the weight of the past weeks pressing on her. Naomi, 27, black, determined, stylish yet professional, hovered nearby, laptop open, fingers poised to share Evelyn's words with the world. The Carters' viral story had already shaken the airline industry, triggered protests in multiple countries, and ignited discussions about racism in corporate America. Evelyn picked up her pen, the ink flowing like a river of her lifetime experiences. To the leaders of the world, to airlines, corporations, and citizens, yesterday I was humiliated, not for mistakes, not for errors, but because of the color of my skin. The assumptions, the doubts, the indignity, all invisible to those who have never experienced it. This is not a story of revenge. This is a story of accountability, of humanity, and of the dignity every person deserves. We are not inconveniences. We are not problems. We are human beings. And until the world recognizes that, equality remains a dream, not a reality. Naomi watched her grandmother, emotion thick in the air. "Grandma, this is perfect. It's honest. It's sharp. People will listen." Evelyn nodded, pen poised for the next line. "It has to reach every corner, Naomi. Not just SkyJet, not just the US. The world must see the truth." By morning, Evelyn's letter was sent worldwide. News agencies, social media, and influencers amplified it immediately. The letter spread like wildfire, translated into multiple languages, shared across continents. Readers from Johannesburg, Tokyo, London, Sao Paulo, and Dubai posted reactions. Finally, someone said it. This is more than a flight story. This is reality for millions. The grace in her words is unmatched. "I'm crying. Thank you for speaking truth." SkyJet's boardroom erupted in panic. The new CEO, Daniel Kim, 42, Korean-American, reform-minded, called Naomi directly. "Ms. Carter, we need to implement your grandmother's vision, not as PR, but as real policy." Naomi's response was firm. No slogans, no empty promises. Every training, every protocol, every employee. Accountability first. The letter sparked global airline reforms. Mandatory anti-bias and sensitivity training became standard across international carriers. Clear reporting systems for discrimination were instituted. Internal audits revealed systemic racial bias previously ignored. Whistleblowers' complaints were finally addressed transparently. Evelyn was invited to join the Global Airline Equity Council, influencing policy for every major airline in the world. Meanwhile, Thomas Reed, SkyJet's former CEO, was under investigation. Corporate negligence, cover-ups, and attempts to smear Evelyn's reputation had triggered multiple lawsuits. One evening, Naomi's phone rang. It was Clara Whitman, the flight attendant who humiliated Evelyn months prior. "Mrs. Carter, I need to say this in person. I was wrong. I didn't realize how much my actions and the culture around me hurt people like you. I'm truly sorry." Evelyn's voice was calm, but strong. "Clara, the world can teach us harsh lessons. The only way to move forward is with awareness and change. Learn from this and never let it happen again." Clara paused, tears in her eyes, then said, "I will, Mrs. Carter. Thank you." Weeks later, Evelyn and Naomi stood on a global stage at the United Nations Summit on Racial Equity and Corporate Accountability. The auditorium was packed with diplomats, corporate leaders, journalists, and activists. Evelyn spoke. "We are all passengers on the same journey. Some of us have had our paths blocked, our dignity questioned, our worth ignored. But the sky is big enough for all of us. We deserve to fly without fear, to lead without doubt, and to be treated with respect everywhere we go. Let this be the legacy we leave our children: equality, justice, and courage." The audience rose to their feet, applauding. Journalists flooded the broadcast worldwide. Naomi, beside her grandmother, whispered, "They're listening." Evelyn smiled, eyes glinting with the calm authority of someone who had fought decades for this moment. They will listen, and they will act. Over the following months, airlines and corporations implemented sweeping changes. International airlines created equity boards led by minority executives. Training programs addressed implicit bias and systemic discrimination. Scholarships and mentorship programs for underrepresented communities expanded globally. Evelyn Carter became part of curriculum in business schools, law schools, and leadership programs. Naomi reflected, "Grandma, you turned your humiliation into a movement." Evelyn placed a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "No, baby. We turned awareness into action. That's the real power." Months later, Evelyn boarded a SkyJet flight, this time as a keynote speaker for their new Equality in the Skies initiative. As she stepped into first class, attendants of every race and color greeted her with respect. Passengers recognized her from media coverage and applauded quietly. Naomi sat beside her, holding her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, you changed everything." Evelyn smiled gently, looking out at the clouds. "No, baby, we just reminded the world. The sky belongs to everyone, and dignity should too." As the plane soared into the horizon, the Carters knew their fight had sparked a global conversation, turning a single act of humiliation into a movement for justice.